Welcome back to the Union Street Podcast. We have an awesome one today. Finally, we have Max and Tinny in the building.
I made it, man.
It's good to have you here, bro.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Max, you're an awesome musician, artist, one rad dude.
Well, goodness, thank you.
So it's awesome to hear from you, have you on the podcast.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get in here for a long time, but you know.
You're a busy man.
I'm a busy boy, but you know, that's not a good enough excuse.
Well, here we are now, so that's, no complaints.
That's right.
You've been on tour. You've been doing River to River Community Records.
Yep.
Been playing music.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get into all that.
Yeah.
But this isn't your first time here either.
No.
We've collabed here at Union Street before.
Oh yeah.
A few times.
Oh yeah.
So that's been pretty cool.
Yeah, I love this spot here. You got a special little thing going here, man.
Well, nice,
and
man.
so one of the songs that we released on River to River Community Records was recorded, a lot of it in this very room right here. I don't think I've been in this room since that day, but yeah, it was that Sad Max track, Persuasion of Truth, side B on our second release. Yeah, we did right here.
But
we've also done. Oh yeah, it's up there on the wall. I saw it.
Yeah.
And then we did some other videos in the other room for some other artists and some Banjo Joe videos, right?
Yeah, those were a lot of fun. Shout out to Reese. Reese was here for both of those shoots.
Yeah.
Reese Smoot. So thank you, Reese.
Reese is the man. I was wondering if he'd be here today.
He's a G. He's busy. He's a busy boy too.
I was jamming on his intro song he made for this podcast, man. It's good.
He's awesome. You know, there's a lot of really awesome talent around here. And that sort of goes hand in hand with what you've been up to, yourself included in that, obviously. I want to dig into it, you know.
For sure.
So Max, what is your background? Southern Illinois. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
Can you tell me some of that origin? Yeah,
sure. Well, born and raised here. I came up in DeSoto, actually. So DeSoto, a little bit isolated from the Carbondale scene as a kid. I went to grade school up there, and in this tiny little rural town. DeSoto, of course, just a few miles north of Carbondale, but as a kid, I never really got into Carbondale too much, and I don't know, I feel like that kind of, even that, that far back, that sort of bit of the origin story, I guess, is a little bit of what facilitated the kind of DIY ethos that I have today, where it's like, well, I got to kind of make my own fun, because there's not a lot going on out here in the country. Like, I lived out on Reed Station Road in the middle of nowhere, and as a kid, I was always kind of bummed on it because my friends were in town in DeSoto, but I lived way out in the country, and so had to improvise to be entertained, I guess, as a kid even, But anyway, then, grade school, got blah, 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 go to high school in Carbondale, and then I am introduced to a more kind of vibrant community, more diverse community, artistically and otherwise, and made a lot of friends there. But as soon as I got into high school, I started playing punk music was the thing.
Now, is this drums, guitar? You were doing all of it at this time?
Mostly guitar. I started on guitar.
Yeah.
But then quickly started playing drums too.
Rocking out.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
And I guess actually my first show I ever played, was just two acoustic guitars. Me and my buddy Tyler Sanders did like an acoustic kind of, it was sort of like an emo folk thing, probably when we were 14 years old or...
Now, where was that?
I think we were still in 8th grade at this point, and this was a talent show at DeSoto Days, the DeSoto kind of town festival thing that they do in June or July every summer. They do the DeSoto Days festival over there.
Nice.
And we did a little talent show sort of thing, and they called it a talent show, but really there was no winner or anything, which was probably it's a good thing, because I hate these like talent shows or battle of the bands or stuff where you have to decide who's the best, because then there's a loser, and then there's kids that feel dejected or like that they are in the wrong, place because they didn't succeed or win at it, I always kind of hated that idea. So this talent show, there was no winner. Everybody won. We all had a good time and had a great experience, That was my first show. My second show, I played drums in, which was this rock and roll band, two-piece rock and roll band I was in called Children, which was me and a dude named Zach Keggy, who was in my class in Carbondale. I met him in Carbondale High School. And from there, I started another punk band called Mr. Ned, which was me and Luke Titus and Andrew Johnson on drums, and then on bass was Sean Welsh, my buddy. He was from Cobden. And that was just kind of a snotty street punk band. We had a lot of opinions, I guess,
Young.
A lot of F-bombs, a lot of, goofy stuff, writing songs about how much our teachers annoyed us. But also, like, semi-political kind of anarchist punk stuff,
Sure.
But in that band is probably where I kind of fell in love with performing, and making music and creating music with other people, And punk is just such it's such a perfect sort of musical genre for an introduction into music, because it's pretty easy, technically speaking, and it's just all emotion, It's just all feel. So I don't know, in a way, like punk rock is like pretty pure form of art in that way, you know what I mean? Like, it's not too, usually, at least especially at that level, it's not like too overthought, it's just kind of feeling, it's just getting that angst out or whatever it is. And so a lot of punk through high school. I had different punk bands that I played in.
Now, where did the punk, you said you came to Carbondale, introduced a new kind of scene, right? Can you talk about that and why punk?
Well, I was listening to punk rock at the time. I was a skateboarder, so I kind of tribed up with the other skaters in high school who were, usually gravitated towards that punk scene as well. But I don't know, I guess if we were to go back further than that even, let's talk about how I even developed a love of music in general, right?
Sure.
Not necessarily performing, but that I have to credit to my parents. My parents, I grew up in a house where music was just always playing. My parents loved music. And they were, in fact, owned a record store from I think 72 up until 84. They owned and operated like a record store / kind of stoner head shop up in northern Illinois, like central northern Illinois.
Really?
Uh-huh.
That's cool.
And so they've always kind of been, they've been a part of that counterculture and instilled in me that sort of rebellious attitude maybe, but also just an absolute love and appreciation for music and all kinds of music, because I grew up with their record collection, which is, like 5,000 records or something that they have at the house, which
wow,
mostly came from this record store that they used to own, right? And so I remember learning how to spin a vinyl record when I was, 7 years old or something.
Wow.
Putting on The Who or even some kind of 80s punk stuff, or like Ecstasy or The Tubes, or, some of these bands. As a kid, I just thought it was fun, kind of funny stuff. But again, it was like I didn't have to know much about it. It just felt good. It just felt fun, And so I was listening to punk rock music back when I was a little kid, not really understanding what it was exactly, but just vibing on it,
Sure, having those introductories, that's laying the foundation for you.
Yeah. So neither of my parents ever played music, but they surrounded me with it still, and always encouraged me to play it. They bought me my first couple instruments for Christmas, and just always did kind of give me that the idea that I could do anything, you know.
Kudos to them, man.
Yeah, which I think is a simple concept that, you know, I think all parents should tell their kids, you know, hey, you can do anything, you can be anything, you know. Everybody that's ever done anything was just another human, you know, so why can't you? You can do it too, you know.
That's great.
So, yeah, my parents kind of raised me with that sort of mentality, so maybe that was the beginning, you know, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was kind of a backtrack there, you know, but...
Well, it's important to, like, you know, to see where you are now and, like, to build that story of, like, even that reflecting of, you know, you might not even understand, right? You were saying what punk is, what these songs are, but you know, it feels good.
Right.
Right. And that's so much music, right? It's just that feeling, right? Yeah, it takes you somewhere.
Uh-huh. That's art, right? That's what art is.
Yeah.
Music just does it with vibrations, you know.
Yeah.
Invisible vibrations, you know.
Right.
But yeah, so, you know, got to thank my parents for allowing me to explore that, you know, and encouraging me to explore that. They still do to this day, you know.
That's cool. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's that encouragement can take you.
Absolutely. So then it's, then high school and playing a whole lot of punk stuff and, really just kind of, that's where I fell in love with performing and creating music. And, you know, back then in high school, I knew that I either wanted to be a musician or a professional skateboarder. And, but I wasn't super good at skateboarding, you know. I could do kickflip and varial kickflip. My best trick was probably like, I could do a kickflip down like a 4 set of stairs, maybe, you know. Radical. I one time did a front side 180 down 6 steps, I think was, you know, that was okay.
That's rad, man.
Yeah, kind of, but, you know, but then there's kids that are doing these 360 flips down 8 sets, like in town, you know.
Well, you know.
And it's just, logistically speaking, it's like, really, you can only... Like, realistically, you can only skate for so long.
Sure. Wear and tear on the body.
Yeah. Unless you're some kind of Tony Hawk or something that's, like, getting mad sponsorships and make a living out of it that way. So, eventually decided to take the musician route instead of the skateboarder route.
Yeah. And what point was
goodness.
that? Was that high school? So you fell in love with performing, and it was about that same time where you're like, you know what? I really want to pursue this music thing.
I mean, I guess it was end of high school, you know, where that's where everybody like has to figure out what you're going to do now, man. You're done with school. What are you going to do now? So, you know, I knew I wanted to be in the music world for sure. I, you know, thought I wanted to be in a band and play, but really didn't have any idea how to do that in a professional way, you know, because like all the punk shows that I played and everything up until then, and even a couple like small little regional tours, it was all just DIY stuff, you know. It was just friends helping friends book shows so that we could have a good time, you know, and so that we could play with each other. And there wasn't ever really any money involved, you know, unless it was a touring band coming through and we're like, hey, man, let's put together a show for our friend's band from Milwaukee that's going to come down. Take money at the door and we'll give them all the money. We'll just play to have a good time, you know. That's what everything was. And so I was like, well, I don't know how to make a living out of this really, like, but I knew I wanted to be in the music world, so I went to SIU for audio production stuff, which I'd kind of dabbled in on GarageBand on my MacBook and stuff like that, you know, doing a little bit of recording. So I was like, well, I'll go to school for audio production because I love doing that, and then I can kind of get into the industry somewhat. But didn't make it more than a couple years at SIU. I don't know. I just started to like kind of have that sort of freak out about all the student loans I was racking up, and just wasn't sure that a studio job was exactly what I wanted. I was worried it would feel like another office gig, except my office would be a studio, you know. And then I was like, I'll be trapped to pay off these student loans. I just kind of had a little freak out at like, you know, I guess 19, 20 years old or something, and dropped out. I was like, man, I'll address it later. Maybe I'll come back, finish the degree later on. But for now, I want to pursue making my own music and playing my own music and doing that.
So it was a turning point, sounds like, almost.
Yeah. I mean, it was, yeah, for sure. Or a pivot, at least, I guess, you know?
Yeah.
But I still didn't really know how to make that happen. You know, all I knew is I'm just going to stay true to and passionate about what I love, which is making music. So I'm just going to keep, practicing and trying to perfect my craft and keep making stuff, you know, and it'll happen.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, dive into the process, right? Dive into the craft, you know? I mean, I think that's, that's probably a good move.
Yeah, sure. But, you know, so I mean, at this point, I'm like playing in 5 bands at a time, you know, playing a lot of music around here. And, but again, still just like pretty underground stuff, you know. We'd play the little clubs like Boobies and PKs and Hangar and things, but also a lot of just basement house shows and other little like DIY events and stuff like that. And we'd put together regional tours and do some like little 2-week runs, just kind of circling around the Midwest. And
now, can you explain to anybody that might not be familiar with that Carbondale basement scene, the Carbondale music scene? Can you paint a picture of you at that time, like what that even is? Because some people might not be familiar when you say a DIY basement show.
Yeah.
Can you tease that out?
Yeah, sure. That's fair. Because even today, as like I travel around and kind of tell people where I was raised, and like I try to explain to people this like vibrant music community that we have here, and everybody's like, what? Carbondale? Never heard of Carbondale music scene. Like, what are you talking about? And I try to explain to them that, it's just this ultra kind of supportive community of musicians that are just like just passionate about playing and making shows happen. So that could be anywhere, you know, really anywhere where you can plug in a PA and gather some people to perform, you know. So but Carbondale specifically does have a history of like basement punk shows. I mean, of course, we got the Lost Cross House in Carbondale, which is widely accepted as being the like oldest running like basement punk house in the country, maybe in the world.
Wow.
Is in Carbondale, Illinois, you know, over there on Elm Street. Yeah. I mean, they just had the like 35-year anniversary party. Well, that was like a couple years ago now. So it's been operating nonstop for over 35 years. You know, that's nuts. As just a house. It's just an unassuming little house on the corner of Elm and Beverage over there. And it's, you know, when you look at it from the outside, it just looks like kind of a cheap rental house maybe. But then, and then as soon as you open the door, the walls are just plastered with flyers and, you know, even other like art pieces and paintings on the walls, but mostly flyers from all of these shows over the last 35 years that have happened in this little house. And it's an incredible, just kind of, you know, incredible view of the musical history that took place right there in that house, you know. and it's a trip. And then you walk downstairs, and downstairs looks like a dingy, unfinished, little basement. Spray painted stuff on the walls and stickers, band stickers everywhere, But, so many bands have played down. There's been so much music down there. And, they say that Kurt Cobain hung out there and like barfed in a corner there or something like that,
Wow.
I guess they say Alkaline Trio, I think, came down there in their early days. There's been some legendary acts that came through there for sure.
I'd say.
And so that's Lost Cross. But then, there's a handful of other houses that are doing similar, basement shows like that. And it's kind of interesting because there's, most of them come and go, might last a few years. And then the person moves out or the landlord sells the place or whatever it is. And then another one will pop up, It's like the kids are going to make it happen no matter what. It's it's awesome that way. But then there's one called the Swamp House, which is, it's like a punk basement, but leaning a little more towards like experimental and noise and like sound art kind of stuff, which is cool to have that kind of sort of a different basement scene almost over there, just a couple blocks away in a different house, Yeah. There was the Ski House that operated for a long time over there, and Ski House in like the early 10s, I guess, somewhere around 2010 and 9, 10, 11, right in there, was a happening spot. That was like, those were some of the coolest house shows where bands like No Bunny would come down. Jeff the Brotherhood came down and played there a few times, and they're like signed to Warner Brothers Records now and all kind of stuff. Who else? Some notable touring acts came through Ski House. But so yeah, a bunch of basement house spots like that where it's just usually the show happens because there's a touring band, a touring underground punk band or something that's coming through and looking for a show, and they'll come play, and then whoever's living at the house or promoting the show will just find a couple local bands to play to support the touring band and kind of spread the word and bring locals in to see this touring band. And it's always donation based, at the door. It's, a few dollars, $5 suggested donation or something. And usually 100% of that money goes to the touring band, and the local acts are just doing it to play and to support the touring act,
Yeah.
And that has always happened, and it's always happened in Carbondale as long as I've been part of the scene, and it still does.
It's a real testament to like a real grassroots movement, within that community of Carbondale.
Mm-hmm.
You have all these, with Lost Cross dating back all that history, to see other ones pop up and to continue on.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I don't know. I've like I get asked this question a lot, and I'm like, it's something I think that started way before me. You know what I mean? Obviously, if like Lost Cross has been doing it for over 35 years, like I'm only 33, and I think it was happening before Lost Cross, but I don't know. There's just always been this kind of special sort of creative vortex here in Southern Illinois, and it has something to do with, like I mentioned earlier, like being stuck up in DeSoto, where I had to kind of I had to make my own entertainment, and sort of make it happen for myself if I wanted to have fun, on a basic level. But I think the Southern Illinois, the region, is a little bit the same idea, where it's like we don't have any big city where like huge, touring, like known touring acts are coming through often, and we're sort of isolated between these two rivers where there's only, there's only a couple bridges to get across. Other than that, it's I-64 that cuts across the top. But the southernmost Illinois is just kind of cut off, And so I think that just over the decades has just bred this sort of this do-it-yourself mentality where we have to just make it happen ourselves if we want to do it. You know what I mean? We can't count on big time promoters or agents. We don't have any like big time clubs that are bringing huge musical acts through. That like we just got to make it happen ourselves. And that's for music, and I think other art forms as well. And then of course we got the university here, which helps. Kind of spark that, flame in people, and that it's definitely an encouraging institution for all kinds of art forms, and also just kind of creates an atmosphere that is a little more liberal, I guess, and a little more artistic, and brings new young people into the area all the time.
Youth.
Yeah.
Right? That's a big part of that. Energy.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you got to have it.
Yeah.
100%, So it's a little bit of all that, I think.
I think it's fascinating,
Yeah.
And I love that correlation of like you looking for something to do in DeSoto, right? I think the through line of like these DIY places, I love what you said, the vortex of, creativity is just kind of out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was maybe nothing else going on, so let's do this.
Yeah.
And wow, I mean, it's been a long time that's been happening, and it's it's pretty cool, honestly.
I know it. I mean, I talk to old guys that say that it's just always been that way. I mean, since the 60s and 70s, not just the 80s since Lost Cross, but I mean before that. And,
right, that vibrancy.
Mm-hmm.
Different ideas, bringing people in from across, whether it's touring from Milwaukee or Chicago, Nashville, coming through Ohio,
Right. Or people coming to the university or.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all that.
So that's interesting. I think it's an important context to note when we're talking about this, storytelling aspect and like building up to, more of just the background, painting that background for anyone that might not know. I think it's fascinating. I think those stories need to be told more too. So
yeah.
I'm glad to hear your perspective on that.
For sure.
Yeah. So you playing basement shows, playing across semi-regionally, right? Across Southern Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
What? You just kept playing, right? Is that sort of just kept playing? Because now I know you, I don't want to fast forward too much, but I know you do a lot of music, playing different bands, touring, right? With national tour. Right. More recently.
Yeah.
So how did you get from there okay, not go to SIU, gonna just focus on the music, focus on my playing, How'd you get from there to there? And then we'll transition into River to River.
Yeah, sure.
More recent project too.
Absolutely. So it was, so I'm now in my early 20s, playing all kinds of music around here, having a blast. Working 2 jobs. I was working at the Mississippi Flyway over there in the kitchen, which I miss dearly. I loved that restaurant so much, man.
Yeah.
And then I was also a gardener at the Carbondale Park District.
Nice.
Which is great. I still miss doing that sometimes, just being outside, planting flowers for a living. It was not bad.
Yeah.
But, and then other than that, just playing as much music as I could. But, then at this point, I've been out of college for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and starting to panic again. Like, all right, well, I gotta just figure out how to get serious about this and make a move, or else, I'm gonna end up just stuck in these punk basements for the rest of my life, which wouldn't be a bad life, don't get me wrong, but just to be a professional musician that's not really the way to go about it necessarily.
Sure.
So I was kind of scrambling, And in fact, I had decided that I needed a bit of a change of environment. And I needed to kind of shake things up a little bit in my routine and in my life. And I had decided I was going to get a job working on the barges. There was a job at Ingram working on the barges that go up and down the Ohio and Mississippi River.
Wow.
And it's one of these gigs where you're out for like 3 weeks and then back for a week and a half and then out for 3 weeks again, back for a couple weeks, out for 3 weeks again, And I was like, you know what? This sounds interesting. It sounds like something that will afford me some time to, gain some perspective and also just kind of be an interesting, cool thing. Living on the river for weeks at a time, I thought this would be kind of neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I drove down to Metropolis, I think it was, where I had the interview with Ingram. Interview went fine, and then they called me, or they said that I'd have to come back, in a couple weeks to do the like physical interview, which basically is where you prove that you can pick up like 50 pounds of cable and carry it over here or whatever, because it's like some physically demanding work being on them barges.
Sure.
And it was in between those two interviews is when I got my buddy Isaac Smith hit me up. Isaac is a awesome dude from Murfreesboro. He was a journalist with the Southern Illinoisan for many, many years. And now he's working up in St. Louis, doing more work up there. But anyway, he was always a good buddy of mine. We were in punk bands together and through high school and stuff. And he was good friends with this band called Rev Peyton's Big Damn Band. And I had seen the Big Damn Band a couple times coming through Carbondale. They came and played at Tres Hombres and had a banger show there, filled the whole place up. I saw them at Hangar 9 and had been listening to them for a while. The Big Damn Band, they're cool. All right, so Isaac's friends with them, and he hit me up in between these two interviews for the barge job. I was like, hey, man, the Big Damn Band's looking for a guitar tech, somebody to be on the road with them to help them set up stage and manage the stage and, be essentially the roadie for the Big Damn Band.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, well, yeah, maybe that's what I should do.
Sure.
Because I think by, getting out on the river, I was just longing for that sort of, that touring kind of lifestyle almost, right?
It's a little like Jack Kerouac almost.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah, on the road, right?
Yeah. And so I jumped on that opportunity, which was bittersweet because, the reality quickly sunk in that like, well, I'm going to be on the road all the time. And I had to like quit a bunch of the bands that I was in back here, or at least scale them way back, because I was going to be on the road with the Big Damn Band now.
Sure.
But I was like, well, I got to do it, man. This is the opportunity to kind of get a glimpse of the, the professional music industry, and the touring lifestyle and what all that's about, what that's like. And also I was already a big fan of the Big Damn Band, so I was excited to do it.
I mean, that's a whole adventure on its own. It's almost like a rite of passage. Sounds like jumping into going on tour like that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know what I was getting into necessarily because
sure,
I've done some, like I said, I did some like regional sort of DIY tours that I booked myself just by hitting up friends of friends, and we would, sleep on the basement floor or sleep in the car or whatever, and do whatever it takes to get to the next gig. But I was like, oh, so I wonder if that's what it's going to be like. But, and I didn't know any of these people really other than Isaac, but, he sent me over there and I took the job. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this. And so I drive over to Indiana. The band's based out of southern Indiana. And at this point, my vehicle is a giant, it's a 15-passenger 91 Ram wagon, like big Dodge Ram 15-passenger van that is painted Emmanuel Baptist Church on the side. And this was our touring vehicle, you know, for all of my punk bands when we went on little tours and stuff. We'd take the big church bus.
Of course.
Yeah. Which was perfect because we never got pulled over as a bunch of punk kids, you know, that had God knows what in the van.
Yeah.
Never got pulled over because it was just a church bus rolling down.
Good way to go incognito.
Yeah,
Just fly under the radar.
Exactly.
We're doing the Lord's work here.
For a while, we had a literal couch in that thing.
Wow.
We could just like sleep in there.
Nice.
Futon mattress on the floor, you know. It was a cool setup.
Nice.
So I take the big bus over there to Indiana. I'm driving over there before our first show. The first show was going to be the next day in Cincinnati, and it's a pretty big music fest in Cincinnati. I'm trying to remember the name of the fest. Anyway, I can't. This is summer of 2013, middle of the summer, hot as hell, and I, you know, so I'm driving over there, and then I realize as I'm on the road, oh crap, I forgot about the time change. I'm like, I'm gonna be an hour late to like my first day meeting up with the big damn band, and so I called their tour manager and was like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm going to be a little bit late. Forgot about the time change. It's like, oh, okay, well, you know, just hurry up and get here when you can. And then I show up. You know, at this point, I'd printed out MapQuest directions because I didn't have a smartphone or anything yet. So I'm going by MapQuest directions that I'd printed out, you know. And by the time I get over there, they're in southern Indiana in Brown County, and the roads are pretty snaky, and there's not like, at that point, there wasn't an interstate that went to Bloomington, the nearby town, or anything. So and I ended up getting lost out there and like can't find their cabin. I like drove by it like 3 or 4 times and could not find it. So I ended up showing up like 2 hours late on the first day, meeting up with the big damn band.
Wow.
And, you know, I could tell they were annoyed for sure. But Rev was like kind of sick even, I think. He had some kind of cold. So he was like, I think too sick to even really care. He was just trying to sleep it off. And that first day we had like a little rehearsal set up, and then we go over to the festival in Cincinnati the next day. And a big ass fest, you know, definitely way bigger than any show I've like been a part of. I mean, probably 7,000 people or something out there at this show that we're playing to. And so I'm like,
huge difference.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of like, I'm kind of like, whoa, wow, this is a lot. And I'm just kind of scrambling, you know, I'm a nervous wreck here. But I think, you know, because we had the rehearsal the day before, I got a pretty good idea how the setup works and everything. Should be fine. And like I said, it's like 100 and something degrees out there. We're all sweating our asses off. But the first show went pretty good. There were some mess ups. You know, I remember I had to help the drummer, like something fell apart on his drum that I had to fix in the middle of the set. And Washboard Breezy's washboard came unplugged in the middle of the set. I had to go up there and plug it in, you know, but all this was like pretty exciting. I was like, wow, you know, I'm like part of the show, like helping make this thing happen here in front of 7,000 people or whatever. You know, it's pretty cool.
That is
cool.
Especially
with like one of my favorite bands. You know, I was psyched on it. But then. And then I go to, you know, I get everything packed up after the show, and then I realize I had lost the tuning pedal that I had used backstage to tune the guitars. I was like, oh shit, where is it, man? It's gone. And it was day one, and I felt like I already lost something, and so I'm like digging around backstage and just asking all the sound people, like, hey, have you seen this pedal? Finally, I found like the lighting guy or something had grabbed it and set it over to the side. And
wow.
managed to find this pedal, didn't lose it, but so day one went well, finally pulled it all together. But so that was that there was kind of my intro into sort of the I don't know, professional,
Sure.
kind of national touring scene, being part of these big music festivals and getting out there, and it was eye-opening as to how all that functioned. It's definitely different than the basement scenes. But so then so I did that for the next 3 years. I was the guitar tech for Reverend Peyton's big damn band.
Really?
This was from 2013 up until 2016. I was guitar tech,
Wow.
and I mean we're touring. We're out, 200 days a year, somewhere around there.
It's a lot of time on the road.
Yeah, and for sure. And that's touring all over the United States. We'd go to Europe once a year at least, sometimes a couple times a year. Down to New Zealand and Australia and stuff like that.
What an opportunity.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's incredible.
And making, decent money. As good money as I was making working 2 jobs back here, so. So yeah, I was psyched on it, and single man at the time, happy to be out there, and not missing home too much. I missed playing with my bros and my bands that I had to kind of slow down with for sure. But back then I was just so gung ho and psyched to be out there and like seeing the world. I mean, really, the first time I saw the ocean was on tour with a big damn band.
Wow.
When we went down to Florida, that first year, probably 2013.
Cool.
And certainly had never been to Europe or West Coast or anything like that. I mean, I'd never been outside the Midwest, really. And so, the big damn band afforded me that perspective and exposure of traveling the world.
Shout out to Isaac for that connection.
Yeah, for
right?
sure, for sure.
I mean, getting out to see all that, that's like life-changing in a big way. Like expanding, you said, your horizons, new places, new faces, seeing these huge crowds, right, with Big Damn Band, because they play big shows, right? You said 7,000 at this festival.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of stories on tour from traveling the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're still on tour, right?
Yeah.
And so how did that transition? Because now you're in the band.
Yep. So
you play drums,
right? Yeah. So in 2016, the drummer at the time, Ben Bussell, he decided he was gonna go back home and kind of domesticate. He found a girl that he wanted to marry, and they're talking about family and buying a home and everything else. And he's like, "Well, I can't do it no more," And he was actually the one that was like, "Hey, but you should try out Max because he's a drummer and definitely knows the stuff, and he's good. Obviously, solid dude who knows how to do the touring thing." I'd been sitting side stage drumming on my lap and stuff the whole time anyway, so I knew all the dang songs. And so, it was a pretty smooth transition, obviously. Ben Bussell leaves, and I pick up the sticks there in 2016, and I've been drumming with them ever since.
How cool is that? The whole journey there through with that band, starting as the tech, showing up 2 hours late, losing the pedal.
Yep.
Right. All the touring. But then to take that next step into the performing.
Yeah.
Right. Not just the tech side.
Right. And it was, honestly, it was at a perfect time because I was almost to the point where I was like, man, this guitar tech stuff's fun and all, and touring's fun, but I need to be performing, I got to be playing music.
You always have that itch inside you. So
I was about to, I was considering man, I got to go back home and make something happen, But then I got the opportunity to play with, one of my favorite bands and tour all over the world playing drums for the Big Damn Band. So I was like, hell yeah, let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
This is like, a dream come true.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, here we are. Still living it, man.
Still rocking.
Mm-hmm. Last couple years, obviously been pretty slow. But yeah, other than that, we've been, still out almost 200 days a year, somewhere around there, touring all over the place, playing some.
So can you tell me that feeling, coming onto the stage, for, say it's a big festival, thousands of people. What is that feeling like walking out there?
Yeah. I've never really been one to get nervous. I never get nervous about it. I get excited. But honestly, it's like the big fests where there's, where you're talking about thousands of people, if not tens of thousands. Like the biggest show I played was in front of 20,000 people at this festival in the Netherlands, in The Hague.
Oh my god!
And this was
that's bigger than the town here.
Yeah, it was nuts.
It's like
And that was like my first month playing drums, I think.
Wow.
Because it was our first tour
in
Europe.
Feeling?
It was our first tour in Europe where I was playing drums, and we were on right after Marky Ramone from the Ramones, of course, the drummer. Has his own like kind of Ramones revival band now where he's still playing drums and He's got kids playing in front of him. We went on right after Marky Ramone, got to shake his hand and stuff, and
wow,
got a picture with him.
Talk about punk roots.
Yeah, no kidding. It was a dream come true to be able to just shake his hand, right?
It's iconic.
And we go on after him and walk out, and it was sold out at 20,000 at this festival. And there was only two stages. There was our stage and then the other main stage is right next to ours, and they alternated. So really, the whole 20 grand, the whole crowd is just right out there all the time. You look out there, and it is a sea of people. Holy
cow.
But that, it was surreal, right? It's hard to even really comprehend how many people are watching. And it's so much different. It's so hard to connect with an audience at that level, of that caliber, right? It's definitely, because it's 20,000 people, but also there's 50 yards between the stage and the front gate where security is, and then all the security guards, and then another 10 yards or something. So the crowd is way back there, first of all, and then it's just this massive sea of people where you can barely see their faces or connect with them, so it was more like just, we just do our thing, luckily it's so easy to play with Reverend Breezy, and we're from the beginning we're just so I don't know, we're just able to vibe and connect musically with one another that for the most part, for most shows, we're just kind of we're just in it, and we're just vibing on each other and our music, and it's and the crowd definitely feeds into that energy, of course, and we do play off of that, and there's some crowd interaction and stuff, but it's a lot harder to get that when it's a huge crowd like that, where most of the people ain't listening, probably they're back there drinking beer and bullshitting or whatever else, and so it was surreal, and it's just so much different than being crammed in a basement with 40 kids that are just completely psyched and just going nuts over what you're playing, And I'm sure there were people in the audience that were having a great time, but it was so different, you know what I mean? And hard to explain, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess a little less intimate, right? With the big crowds, maybe.
Yeah. So that's 20,000 people. But then, if you play a fest with 3,000 people or something, that you can connect with that audience for sure. Or we just did the Big Damn Band played that fest in Cape the Shipyard Fest just a couple weeks ago. And that's about what they sold, about 3,000 tickets there,
Wow.
I think, give or take.
That's
Our
amazing.
crowd was like, maybe more like 500 or 1,000 people were like kind of engaging and watching us, which to me is about the perfect amount. Like I love that crowd size because it's easy to engage with them and connect with them and get them to even kind of participate in some of the sing-along stuff or whatever it is,
Sure.
I love that stuff. But after being out for a month and playing a bunch of shows like that, sometimes I do miss just being in a dingy little basement, playing with all my buddies in a grimy little spot like that too.
Yeah.
I love doing it all,
Yeah, sure.
But
Got to know where you came from, right?
yeah,
That path, and to stay connected.
yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. But Big Damn Band's pretty unique in that we do kind of we play all kinds of venues. We still do play some like pretty small, like kind of punk clubs, but then like some pretty nice sort of mid-sized theater kind of clubs, and then we get the big festivals in the summertime and stuff too. It's which keeps it interesting.
Sure.
For sure.
Keep it mixed up. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Is there, so all your years touring, I mean, it's been a while now.
Yeah, going on 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats on that, first of all.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Is there like a story that stands out all over those tour times? Because I know there's got to be tons of stories, right? Just random things that you see that's happened. Is there anything that, like this story from tour, stands out?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. It's like you said, there's just so many, and they just all like blur together. It's like when somebody asks this, I'm always like, I don't know what
Sure.
one to pick out, But it's I mean,
Or
I guess
take
my
away
favorite
from tour.
I guess my favorite thing about touring still is the people that you meet out there, and that's what's interesting and important and memorable to me is like these interesting people that you meet out there and the friends that you make, like we were on tour a couple years ago. In fact, this just came up in like my Facebook memories thing the other day, so maybe that's why it's on my mind.
Yeah.
But I think it was 4 years ago now, and we were on tour up in the Northwest, and we met Reverend Breezy's buddy Jason Webley, who they had played music with before I was in the band, and I think I had met him like in passing when I was guitar tech and I was like busy hauling stuff around or whatever. But so we got to meet this guy Jason Webley, who is just kind of he's a very musical guy who kind of came up doing street performing around Seattle. He'd play piano and accordion on the street, busking, but also doing sort of underground events and DIY stuff, and kind of reminded me of the sort of place where I came from, that grassroots kind of artistic mindset, and he's done a lot of stuff with Amanda Palmer, who is with the Dresden Dolls, and Amanda Palmer still does pretty amazing music and stuff. And so we're like, all right, well, we're going to stay at Jason's house tonight because we're in town. We got a day off, and let's hang out with Jason, maybe make some music and hang out with him. We're like, all right, let's go, man. We go over to Jason's house, which is outside of Seattle, north of Seattle by Everett, Washington, I think it was. And we're driving over there, and I'm like, well, where the hell are we? And we end up in this, like, pretty dingy sort of industrial kind of neighborhood that is on this big river. It's like big kind of warehouses and what look like old busted down, former factories over here. And a few houses scattered here and there. And are we in the right place? And we show up, park on the street where he had his two Mercedes-Benz old 80s Mercedes-Benz diesels that he has converted into biodiesel And these are what he tours in.
Wow.
These old Benzes. We're like, oh, this must be the right place because here's his cars. Yeah, for sure. But you can't see his house still because it's on the river. And it turns out he lives in this little kind of houseboat, I guess you could call it, that he built. And, you walk down this shaky sort of ramp, little walkway to get to this, what looks like a little floating cabin. It definitely doesn't look like a boat. It just looks like a kind of house, little bitty one-room cabin on pontoons that's just floating out there,
Wow.
Like, oh, okay, this is where we're staying. Cool.
On the river.
Yeah.
Back on the river.
And so he shows us his place, and it's this incredible little cabin that he built. There's a glass floor in the bottom, and the main just kind of living room area where he can look through and see like little fish. He's got a light under there,
Wow.
But the place is just piled up with like kind of busted old antique instruments, old drums and accordions and trumpets and other weird instruments that I don't even know what they were, just kind of piled up everywhere. The place is sort of a mess, the kitchen's kind of a wreck, which the kitchen is in the same room as the living room, and he sleeps in a little loft that's like up top. It's like, wow, this is how this guy lives. Wow, we're going to stay here, huh? Neat. And it was neat, but it was also like, what? Where are we going to sleep? Reverend Breezy decided like, oh, we'll get a hotel right down here. It'll be fine. But Jason's like, oh, but Max, you can stay here. Check this out. This is actually where I used to sleep. This used to be my house. And we go outside and around the front, and there's another little tiny, what looks like a shed on pontoons that is that's floating. It's not attached to his house except by like a couple ropes or something. And so it just kind of floats off here to the side. And now this is his guest room. This is where he lived as he was building the main floating cabin.
Wow.
But now it's the guest room that is mostly a marimba. There's a giant marimba in there and then a tiny little bed.
Wow.
He's like, all right, you'll stay here, Max. And I was like, all right, cool. This sounds awesome. And we love fishing, so we were like trying to fish off the side there. Never really caught anything. And had a fun night hanging out and jamming and getting to know this guy who just has such an interesting kind of creative mind, a little bit dark, I guess, and but he's definitely got some kind of Tom Waits vibes, like musically and philosophically, maybe,
Wow.
Cool dude, Jason Webley. I mean, anybody listening should look up Jason Webley. He's cool as heck.
Yeah.
And so, we're hanging out pretty late into the night, and then Reverend Breezy go to their hotel. I go to my little guest room with the marimba that's floating off to the side. But that night, like what they called a typhoon came through and hit the northwest.
Oh no.
And so it was a pretty gnarly storm.
On the water.
on that. And there's a big river,
Wow.
And so that whole night, my whole little shed house is just kind of, it's shaking around and banging back and forth into like his house and the other person's dock that's on the other side of
oh my gosh,
the shed. And I didn't get a ton of sleep that night. It was pretty freaky,
About to float down the river, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I mean, like some sheet metal got ripped off of the
Dang.
big sort of boat garage that was the neighbors, like it was a serious storm. But we were fine. Jason's house was fine. And woke up the next day, happy to be alive and still there.
I say.
But, and I don't know, it's something I'll never forget, and I'm grateful to have gotten to know that incredible artist and to be able to experience his just weird little life that he has there on the river, you know what I mean?
That's incredible. That's like Americana right there.
Yeah.
Like that little tidbit is just, the people, the places you see, like that's so unique.
Mm-hmm.
And man, that's like a whole novel could be written just about that one place.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. For sure. He's written many songs about it.
I bet.
And he's the kind of guy where it's like he probably has enough, he has the means to like live in a nicer place, an actual house or whatever, but I think for him it is just a very a poetic way to live, you know, I think.
It sure is. Sounds like
weird
it.
little house that he built on this kind of dingy part of the river, you know, industrial part of the river. I think it's inspiring and poetic to him, you know.
Staying close to the source, right?
Yeah.
Like probably pulls a lot of inspiration there.
Yeah. And when you listen to his music, it feels like that place, you know, for sure.
That's cool.
But so, you know, it's stories like that I love, where you get to just kind of connect with people and kind of experience their world a little bit, you know. I think that's the best part about traveling in general, you know. And that's how it kind of broadens your perspective and gives you more of an appreciation for the humanity, I think, you know. I don't know.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, obviously there are other nights where you just kind of get wild and end up partying and or whatever else, but it's like those nights you barely remember, and
sure,
they're kind of a dime a dozen. But yeah, man. So, you know, that's something.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really cool story, and it goes back to just that connection on the road.
It's that connection, man. That's what
connecting with people, connecting.
That's what it's all for, you know.
Stories.
That's what music and art is about. I think, you know, it's connecting with people. You know, if nobody's able to connect to your art, then why are you doing it? You know. I mean, I guess for expression, right? Self-expression. But I mean, as far as performing, you got to be able to connect. You know.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a really interesting, you know, tour background there. I mean,
yeah.
Again, I'm sure there's a lot more, but I think that's a great example, just what you'll see out there.
Yeah, and just kind of it's sort of an adventure, you know. You kind of never know exactly what the next day is going to bring. But I mean, I will say more often than not, it's just, you know, kind of early mornings and long nights, and then you end up at the hotel and do it again.
Yeah.
Long drive, early morning, long drive.
Mm-hmm.
Get to the venue, do the thing, and then it's another drive to the hotel, and you try to get a few hours of sleep before you do it again.
Right.
The vast majority of the days go like that, you know, where it's not quite as glorious and exciting as some people might think.
Right. Life on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, if you don't have days off out there, then that's how it goes. So, you know, we always try to schedule some days off, especially if it's a place where we know we have good friends that we want to spend a little bit of time with, or if we want to see the Grand Canyon or whatever it is, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, because it's important to do that stuff personally to kind of stay excited and to fuel your artistic passion too, you know.
Totally. Absolutely.
Because if you're just driving, playing shows and going to hotels, you really got nothing to write about except driving and going to hotels and playing shows. And
right.
That's not very fun or exciting or relatable to most people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Robert Bly, the poet. You remember Robert Bly? He just passed away a couple years ago, I think. But he, I forget how the quote went, but to paraphrase, he basically said that any artist should really only spend 50% of their time on their art, on their craft, and the other 50 should be just living. You know, it should be spending time with your friends and family, and just, you know, living your life, traveling or whatever else. And, because otherwise you got nothing to write about, nothing to create, nothing to inspire your creations, you know. If all you do is create, how are you gonna write about writing? You know what I mean? Like, that's boring.
Mm-hmm.
So I always try to think about that, you know, and try to keep that in mind, especially when I have like a couple weeks where I'm just going real hard and like probably working too hard on something. I'm like, man, I got to step back and make sure I do save time to just live life and, you know,
go fishing.
yeah, go fish and, soak up some of the beauty of, of life. Yeah. Life itself.
Oh, that's the true. Yeah. I mean, I love that, you have to have something to write about, right? And your experiences getting out there, right?
Yeah.
What inspires you.
Right.
I think that's great. I do want to transition. So from tour, playing in bands, right? You guys opened up for ZZ Top recently, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's iconic as well.
Yeah.
So that's like, a lot of cool stories, moments like that, I'm sure. But I do want to talk about River to River Community Records.
Yeah, of course.
So Max, what is River to River Community Records?
River to River Community Records is it's something that I guess it's been a long time coming, because a record label has been something I've wanted to do for most of my life now. So yeah, River to River Community Records is a record label that I started, I guess, a year and a half ago now, to kind of promote and release and represent some of the incredible music that is made by musicians that came out of this thriving community here. And it's something I've always wanted to do, because because I've always just been so inspired and excited about all of the musicians here. I just never really knew how to approach it, and back in, my punk rock days, I figured maybe I'll just start kind of a DIY label where we're putting out CDRs, burning CDs and printing out pieces of paper to fold around it, or maybe tapes or something like that. But no, I never really made that happen, and I don't know, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because maybe I would have got kind of stuck in that sort of little idea. But anyway, so River to River Community Records, really the concept sort of came to me when I was on the River to River Trail in 2020, in the throes of the COVID shutdown and all that. I decided I was finally going to do part of the River to River Trail, which I'd also always wanted to do that. River to River Trail, of course, is a hiking trail that goes through the middle of the Shawnee National Forest here, all the way from the Ohio River to the Mississippi River. So it goes, it starts at it starts up at Elizabethtown up there, I think, up by Shawneetown. Goes through Garden of the Gods, and it goes through, Panther's Den. It goes through Makanda and Giant City, and then through Alto Pass over by the Cross, and then all the way over to Grand Tower over at the Mississippi. So right through the heart of our region here, of course, And obviously I've, always had an appreciation for the nature and beautiful national forest that we have here. And I was like, well, I've got some time now. We're not touring. I'm going to do some of this trail. So I started at the Mississippi side, actually. Started at Grand Tower and hiked all the way to my house, which is over here, not too far from here, over on 148.
Yeah.
So I had to go off trail after Panther's Den and kind of hike north to get up to basically over by Grassy Road and get to my house, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so that was about 60 miles of the River to River Trail.
Wow.
The whole thing is about 160, I think, or 157 miles or something like that. So, I did, less than half of the trail, about 8 days, or it was like 8 nights, like 9 days or something.
Wow.
Which was moving at a pretty leisurely pace, really. There was a couple days where I went with my buddy Darwin. There was a couple days when we did like 10 miles, but for the most part, it was like 5-mile days, something like that.
Yeah.
And, but just being out there, just kind of with no sort of distractions, you're completely unplugged, and just kind of absorbed in the just kind of peaceful quietness of the woods. You know, it was gives you a lot of time to think about sort of what you got and what you want and what you need and what's important to you, and you know, in that way it was pretty therapeutic and kind of meditative, you know, to be out there, which the woods always is for me anyway, you know, but especially when you're out there for 8-9 days.
Really get to sink into that.
Yeah, exactly. You really get to kind of, and really, exactly, just sink into it and lean into it. And so when I was out there, you know, that was the kind of my realization was like, man, this place is just, this music scene is so important to me, and like, I wouldn't be anywhere any close to where I am right now professionally or whatever as far as a music career if it wasn't for all of my friends and just people that have inspired me in this music community, you know. And so I'm like, I gotta do something about that, you know. And we had, a few months before that, I had started a Patreon like fundraising campaign for the Big Damn Band, because at the beginning of COVID, when all of our tours got canceled and we really had no way to make money, I was kind of, and even before that, I'd kind of been sort of researching this Patreon thing. Well, how does this work? Patreon is like a sustaining crowdfunding, sort of internet crowdfunding campaign deal. So it's like a Kickstarter or GoFundMe, but instead of just raising a bulk amount of money for one project, it's more like people sign up for a monthly pledge to keep a certain idea or project going, to keep it alive and funded. And so it's basically like a subscription sort of idea, right? You can choose if you want to sign up for $1 a month, $5 a month, or $50 or $100 a month. And at different donation levels, at different tiers, you can receive different sort of exclusive benefits from the band or from the label or whatever it might be. And so earlier that year, before I went out on the trail and stuff, I had set up this Patreon for the Big Damn Band so that we could stay afloat when there ain't any shows to do. And it did pretty good. We were very surprised by the amount of support we got on that thing. And that kind of just confirmed to me that the system works, you know. I mean, if there are people who believe in your cause and want to support it, they will do it with Patreon or whatever else it might be. So I was fresh on this Patreon idea. I'm like, wow. I was convinced that because this artistic community here is just so supportive of one another and kind of has that do-it-yourself ethos, and always has, I was like, you know what? I think I could start a sort of community-funded record label where the people in this music scene are mostly the ones that are funding and supporting it. I'll use Patreon, you know. So I started the Patreon, and at first I kind of set it up just as a Sad Max and Tenny Patreon. And the idea was when I get to $500 a month on this Patreon, then we're going to launch this label. And sure enough, it got there real quick. And people were psyched on the idea, it seemed like. So,
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And so, then we're getting $500, $600 a month on donations from mostly people from around here that are giving $5-10 a month to see this label happen, you know. And it happened. You know, the idea was that I wanted to release vinyl records because maybe it's just a personal thing, but vinyl is just something that I think it's my favorite format of music. You know, it's something something tangible that, you know, you can actually own and hold and look at the art on it. And it's a more like interactive way of listening to music where you have to set the needle down and flip the record over. You know, it's something that you engage with and are kind of forced to appreciate a little more, I think, you know. And then also maybe that goes back to like I said, when I was 7 years old and my parents taught me how to use a record player. You know, I've always loved spinning records.
Wow.
So I was like, we'll do records. Let's do 7-inch records. I thought 7 inches because they're cheaper to make than a 12-inch, obviously. And I wanted to just kind of keep the ball rolling, you know, instead of committing to one release for like 6 months, you know. I was like, well, maybe every few months we can put out a 7-inch. And then it's sort of makes more sense too in this like internet age where everybody's attention span is so damn short. It's like, well, you know, we'll just do a few songs per release and then showcase the next artist and just kind of keep the momentum going a little bit that way, you know. So yeah, here we are now. We've released 4 7-inch records. The next one should be coming out next month. You know, the Patreon support has dropped off a little bit, but kind of plateaued. You know, part of that is just that I need to get better about hyping it up and trying to get people.
Well, if you're
excited.
listening, subscribe to that Patreon.
That's right. Get on the Patreon, patreon.com/River to River Community Records.
Yeah, support Max, support what you're doing there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
We could use it. And it's like, and there's pretty cool benefits for, you know, signing up. If anybody that signs up on the Patreon can buy all of the releases at cost value, basically.
Wow.
So, but, you know, a $10 7-inch record, usually, if you're on Patreon, you can buy it for $5 or $6.
Wow.
You know, so that's for, even if you sign up for $1 a month or $5 a month, you can still get that deal on these records, which is cool. But, you know, honestly, a lot of people ain't taking me up on it too, because again, people are just like, they just want to support, you know. But that is definitely an option, and I am happy to give you that coupon. You know what I mean?
I think it's amazing service, you know, to have the 7-inch vinyl too, featuring local artists. I mean, that's like, I would imagine, like so fulfilling to have something tangible, right? To have these artists come in, record, put it on wax. And it's got to be pretty rewarding.
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's something that got me excited. But also like, I think all the artists that we've done so far, this is their first vinyl release.
Wow.
You know? How
cool is that?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, all of the artists have been psyched on it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, our first release was Banjo Joe, which we did some Banjo Joe videos here at Union Street Arts, which were awesome.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
And so I chose him as the kind of inaugural release because to me he was just perfect, because I knew he had hiked the River to River Trail, and that he did appreciate the namesake of the label, and also he had Banjo Joe was kind of known as the front man of the Whistle Pigs, but the Whistle Pigs kind of quit playing, and Joe went on a hiatus for few years, kind of just working on himself and figuring his own stuff out, and I know he had just kind of started doing some solo gigs on his own again. And so I reached out to him because I knew people would be excited about the return of Banjo Joe, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, personally, I've just been a fan of him forever, the Whistle Pigs and stuff. And I'm a banjo player myself, and I just always loved his stuff. So I reached out to him, and he was 100% on board from the get-go, and recorded his stuff at my house. I got a pretty decent little studio set up over there at the house. So I recorded his stuff live in there and added bones to the one song, The Provider.
That's cool.
And so that record came out last June.
Okay.
And the next release was that Sad Max record, my own stuff. 2 songs there. The one song we recorded here. The other song I recorded at my home studio, and my partner Angie sang on it. Dakota Holden did some pedal steel on there. And that, I put that out mostly as kind of just to keep things going as I was trying to figure out the next release, because these songs were pretty much already ready to go. And so I was like, well, I kind of hate to do like my own release as like the second release, it feels a little selfish, but also I was like, well, I want to keep stuff coming out.
Right. Obtainable. You can control your schedule.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
Control. Okay. You're in the studio. I'm at home.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And this stuff was already pretty much ready to go,
Yeah.
Did that while I was kind of lining up the next release, which was Kevin Olau. Carve was the name of his project he was working on, which is stuff that he completely self-produced, recorded and mixed himself, wrote all this stuff. Wow. 4 songs that are just like beautiful, kind of hard to describe. It's kind of jazz infused, sort of post-rock, atmospheric, like melancholy kind of rock stuff, but very just very beautifully textured and really musical, called Just a Dream by Carve. And that so that was our 3rd release, and then the 4th release was The People versus Hugh Daniil, which is Hugh, of course, from Woodbox Gang. That record just came out last month. And I was super psyched and honored to be able to work with that guy as a absolute legend here in Southern Illinois, and maybe my favorite songwriter of all time.
Oh, cool.
Love that guy. The next release will be Casey Lee Rogers.
Really?
Marion Boy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And a couple country songs that he recorded down in Nashville. But he's been wanting to get them out for a while, and
that's really awesome.
We've got it all pretty well put together. We're just trying to nail down the release date, which will be in November.
Oh, coming up.
Coming up.
Yeah. We've had Casey. Casey's played on the stage. Actually, I think it was with Buzzard.
Mm-hmm.
One of those. I think I first saw him acoustic, just singing, so is it within that style, or is he with band? Can you give a little tease about upcoming?
It's full band. It's full band deal. It's
very cool.
It's fully produced, man. This thing is I will admit, like when I reached out to him, I kind of expected to get a little more raw, sort of outlaw, kind of rough, Casey Rogers stuff.
Sure.
Which I love.
Definitely.
But then he sent me these songs that he had like just recorded, and they weren't mixed yet when I got them or mastered or anything like that. But it's a couple songs that he wrote many years ago, but he recorded these with a guy in Nashville called Daniel Donato. Daniel Donato is kind of a up and coming telly slinger down in Nashville who so he tours around a lot anymore, and I think plays with a couple of groups down there, but mostly his own thing. Daniel Donato.
Cool.
And he's an amazing guitar player. And so he produced these songs, and Daniel Donato's band is the band that was playing behind Casey for these songs that he wrote. And recorded down there. I can't remember what studio it was, but with Daniel Donato and his band, and man, it is some well-produced, like clean Nashville stuff, man. Nice. But just great kind of honky-tonk thing. Just 2 songs on this one on each side.
Cool.
So it'll spin at 45.
Nice.
But yeah, the production is awesome on it. It's amazing. And the songs are just really good, catchy Casey songs that you've probably heard out there somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, be on the lookout for that. We'll get that out next month. We're trying to nail down when we can do a release party, and then trying to do the release right around there, obviously.
Sure. Yeah.
Which will probably be up at John Brown's over here.
Cool. I'll have to be there.
Yeah. But yeah, follow us on social media and all that, and we'll be making an announcement very soon about the official release and all that. And that brings us up to where we are today.
Here we are.
Here we are.
So is where would social? Where are you guys at? Facebook.
Yeah.
Group the Best Facebook page. What's the?
Yeah, we're on
best way to
Facebook,
reach you?
Instagram. Got a website. All that. It's all just River to River Community Records at River to River Community Records and river to river community records.com. Which I know is a mouthful, but I wanted to keep it easy to remember and consistent. So it's just all River to River Community Records.
Yeah.
Look it up.
Check them out.
Yeah.
And it ties into the inspiration point, right? Where the name came from, where you were at when
That's
you
right.
had this idea.
Yeah. So, it is kind of speaking to that, to the literal
the
trail.
region.
But also, right, exactly. I want to represent the music all throughout this region, from river to river, from Murfreesboro to Harrisburg.
There's a theme here. This river theme keeps coming up.
I know. Isn't
right?
that interesting?
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, with the barge.
It's a powerful source. Mother Nature, right?
For sure.
That's it. That's what we got right here.
Mm-hmm.
In land between the rivers, river to river.
That's right. Yeah.
That's cool.
It is, it's what makes this region what it is.
Yeah.
In many ways, I think.
Sure it is. Yeah. And so what's next, Max? I know you got a lot going on. You're off tour now, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing this upcoming record. What's next, man? What do you?
Yeah. So yeah, the Big Damn Band's pretty well wrapping up for the rest of the year. We got, well, I don't know if you'll get this podcast out in time, probably not, but we are playing the Halloween show in Carbondale. Big Damn Band's coming to play that Halloween show on
cool.
Saturday.
Nice.
On the 29th. It's going to be fun. Glad to be back playing the hometown with the Big Damn Band. It'll be cool.
That's rad.
And then other than that, we got a couple shows we play kind of on Thanksgiving weekend, which is sort of a tradition of ours. We always play on Black Friday and the next day.
Cool.
And then we got a couple shows in December and then a New Year's Eve show. But other than that, I got a lot of time at home, which I plan to be catching up with label stuff and kind of plotting out the next year and upcoming releases. And I've got a couple recording sessions lined up at my studio over there. And trying to figure out what's next with the label. The next release, the first release next year will be one by Hans Predator.
Wow.
Yeah, if you know those guys.
Epic.
Mm-hmm. Punk rockers from Carbondale. And it's kind of a Hans Predator spin-off project almost, which is so you got Evan Newman on the front there, and he's writing some of the songs, but also Nathan Gill is playing guitar and writing some songs. His brother Brandon's playing drums, and Grant Cantala is playing bass and writing some songs. So it was like a little bit more of a collaborative sort of punk rock supergroup almost.
Yeah.
That they called Hoons instead of Hans Predator.
Okay.
So that, we recorded that at my house, and that thing is coming together, and that'll be coming out in the spring.
Cool. Very cool.
So, getting stuff together for that, and be recording some of my partner Eva Joy's music in the winter, and hopefully doing some more like videos and other just kind of fresh content from artists that we've released over the past year and stuff too. And maybe getting some of them in Union Street Arts to do some videos in here. I don't know.
That'd be cool, man. Yeah.
But yeah, because I want to, I want to continue to, kind of promote and represent the artists that I have released in the past as well. I don't want to just like put the record out and then forget about them and move on. I mean, like this is trying to, sustain this exposure as much as I can. So
you're doing a good job, Max. You really are.
Well, thank you.
Excited for what you've got going. What you've been able to do thus far. Just keep doing it, man.
Yeah, dude. I will.
Staying on it.
Thank you, dude. Yeah, it's it's a lot. It's a lot, maybe a lot more than I expected to take on as a basically one man operation.
Yeah.
Of course, my partner helps me a lot too. Eva Joy is kind of the first lady of River to River Community Records. She's
shout out.
Yeah, shout out Eva, my girl.
Hey.
Angie Fisher also,
Of course.
She performs under her name, Eva Joy. And, but yeah, she has been incredibly helpful, of course, because anytime I ain't home and I'm on the road and something needs to get done, of course, Angie's always there to help. And she's been working a lot of vendor booths and helping get the River to River word out there. And she's honestly a better kind of PR person than I am. She's just so charismatic and just easy to talk to. She's awesome.
Yeah, makes a good team there then,
Absolutely.
That's a good balance.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Yeah. Different strengths. Let's reach common goals.
That's right. I couldn't do it without her. That's for sure.
Nice.
But it is, it's a labor of love. So it's a lot of work, but man, it is rewarding, and I love to do it. I ain't stopping anytime soon.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Is there any piece of advice that you would give, say, someone in a small rural town, maybe similar shoes? Looking back now, you've been all the places you've been, done the things you have. What would you say to that person? Is there anything that they can leave them with?
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest thing I've learned, throughout my life, and which again has kind of been a theme that we've came back to, is that you just gotta do it. You gotta make it happen yourself. Like, you can't just wait for somebody else to do it. You can't wait for somebody else to start promoting these shows, or you can't wait for someone else to open up the venue, or you can't wait for someone else to start the band that you want to join, or whatever it is. Like, you gotta make it happen, Yeah, especially if you're in a kind of a rural place where opportunities are limited. Like, you gotta create the opportunities, and you can, anybody can. You just gotta, use your passion, believe in yourself, and do the thing, Other than that, it's also, trying to become a little business savvy as well. Because, like, if you want to make a living out of it, unfortunately, you got to make some dang money. That's part of it,
That's part of it, yeah.
Which is something that took me a long time to realize, too, and it was something that I kind of rejected for a while, as coming up as like a punk rock pseudo-anarchist kind of,
Sure.
punk kid. It's like, well, I don't need to make money doing this. I just do it because I love it, which sounds great. But it's like, you gotta eat,
Sure. Right.
So,
the artist, that's such the artist point of view, is like the purity of the art's sake, but
right.
There is another side.
Right. Which is why, some artists have the advantage of being able to hire a manager or a booking agent, or, all of that stuff, business manager and booking agent and label, and all this stuff to handle that side for them, Once you get to a certain level, you can do that, and you can hire people to handle the business side of it so you can focus on your art. But when you're coming up, you gotta do it yourself, and especially in a place like this where there ain't a lot of agencies or managers that are, helping, especially musicians, do that kind of thing. I'm trying to do a little bit as a record label, but, I can't be managing everybody's finances and stuff like that,
Sure.
obviously, But I am always happy to, shed a little bit of insight on it and kind of help people get there, But, yeah, that's the takeaway. Do it yourself, man. You got to do it yourself.
I think that's a great point to make, and sort of touches on a lot of the themes we've hit today.
Yeah.
Do it yourself, DIY.
Yep.
Make something happen.
That's right.
Create what you want.
Yeah, that's that simple, man.
Right on, Max.
Yeah.
Well, Max, is there anything we missed? Anything you want to touch on? Anything you want to say to the people out there?
Shoot, I don't know, man. I feel like we pretty well covered it.
I definitely want to have you back. I want to get your artists involved. I want to do more collabs with River to River.
Yeah, let's.
More podcasts, more videos.
Yeah, let's. Especially this winter when I'm kind of slow on touring and stuff. Like, let's make it happen.
Let's do it, man. Yeah. We're through wedding season. We're just getting through. We were talking about that beforehand. So.
Yep. I had a couple of those.
Getting through. We're gonna have some more time. So yeah, let's.
Cool.
Winter's always a good time to go in studio, right? And just get some internal things done.
I guess the only other thing I will say is as a, it takes for a creative community to exist and thrive. It ain't up to the creators exclusively, at least. You need artists and creators obviously to make this stuff, but you also need the consumers to simplify it, right? But you need people that will appreciate it and that want to support it and that will find some use and value out of it, right? So if you appreciate the artistic community that we have here, show it, tell people about it, support it, and it doesn't even have to be money necessarily. But just help spread the word, share those posts on Facebook and follow the things on YouTube and Instagram and all that. That stuff seems silly, but that's where it all exists right now, is social media and internet, and that's how people like us get the word out, it's with the internet stuff, it's with podcasts and videos and social media and all that crap, so just following us and engaging with your favorite artists and creators in that venue is important and goes a long way. It helps us in the algorithms, and it just helps us get the word out. So don't feel like you have to give money to support your favorite artists or creators or labels or whatever it is. There's many ways you can support, volunteer or share the stuff online or, just tell other people that you think would also appreciate and value these things, but also give us money. Yeah. There it is.
That's right. So Max, brilliant, man. Thanks a lot for coming on.
For sure.
It's been a good convo.
Yeah,
so glad to do this.
Thanks, man. Yeah, let's do it again sometime.
We will. And thanks for everyone for watching and listening to this podcast. Check out Max, River to River, Community Records. Check out the Patreon. Support if you can. Buy the records. Go see Max on tour. Support music. Support live music. Support your local artist.
That's right.
Go to that vendor fair.
Yep. Get
out. Buy the local goods because it's about that community. You said Community Records.
That's it, baby. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thank you. And thanks, everybody.
All right, Max. We'll have you back on, and we'll see you the next time.
All right, Luke. Be good, man.
Right.